Good evening, Unstoppables. How are we? I'm doing a bit of improvising on the setup front here because I broke my ring light. So I'm literally like plumping up pillows so I can sit on the edge of my bed. So profesh. Hi, welcome to the Unstoppable series. So I'm just waiting for our guest to join us. While I'm waiting for that, let me give you a bit of a preamble. So my name's Heidi Mavir. I'm the Unstoppable Woman. I'm a coach, a life coach, a mentor, a badass, a feminist, a public speaker, and a single mom. And I live in Wakefield in Yorkshire. And every week I interview someone awesome, another incredibly unstoppable, badass, amazing human. And tonight I am super delighted that we are going to be joined by Jem Kennedy. Jem and I crossed paths a short while ago. Jem's a certified transformational coach. She's hi Ange. She's also an EFT and Matrix Reimprinting Practitioner. You'll get to hear what that means. She's a body liberation activist, and she edits and curates an amazing zine or zine. We'll decide which the right word is for that, called Queers and Co. So we're going to chat tonight. I'm just going to add her on, and we're going to do some introductions. And while we're doing some introductions, I'm going to be sharing so I can get this into some of my groups. But I'm hoping that she will be here any minute. If you're watching live, just drop us a hey and tell us where you're watching live from. And if you're watching on replay, let us know where you're watching on replay from. So I am now adding Jem, and I'm hoping it says adding at the top. It says adding. If you want to make sure that you get informed on every week when this is happening, then please, if you're on my Facebook page, or go to my Facebook page, Heidi Mavir, The Unstoppable Woman, and click sign up. And you'll be able to sign up for my mailing list. I send recordings of these out every week after they've happened. And also, if you are following me on Instagram, @Tidy. Oh, she's upside down. That's a good start.
Upside down.
If you're following me on Instagram @HeidiBangTidy, if you go into the link in my bio and click join my mailing list, then you'll get every week you'll get an update. So hi, good evening.
Hi.
Good evening.
Hi.
We are the right
Thanks for
way
having
up.
me. Yeah,
I'm so
finally. I'm
excited.
going to move back a bit because otherwise I'm really close.
Yeah, it's like this, isn't
It's
it?
a bit better. Yeah. Hello.
Up close and personal with Jem Kennedy. How are you?
A bit too close. Yeah, I'm good, thank you. Yeah.
Good.
Excited to be here.
I'm excited to have you. If someone is watching live, maybe Louise could let us know if she can see and hear us both. That would be amazing. While she's doing that, and while you're just doing a little bit of a preamble, I'm going to do a bit of inviting and making sure that this goes into all my groups. So give us a little bit of background on you, who you are, what you do, why you're doing this.
Okay.
While I do
so
some
yeah,
sharing,
as you
go
said,
ahead.
sure. So as you said, I'm a coach and an EFT and Matrix Reimprinting Practitioner. I guess why I'm doing it is because a couple of years ago I had some coaching and I found it really powerful. And it kind of started me on my whole journey of understanding why I hated my body so much and why I'd spent so much of my life not doing the things that I wanted to do. So I guess going on that journey, kind of discovering body liberation, becoming more of an activated person, in a way, it felt like full circle to then retrain or to train to be a coach and an EFT and Matrix practitioner to, I guess, facilitate that for other people and support other people in discovering that there is another way for themselves.
Awesome. So tell me a little bit about you. Where do you live? How, give me a bit of
Okay,
background on you as a person.
sure. So I live in Saffron Walden. We're just outside in the middle of nowhere. That's in Essex. And I have two children. They're awesome, and they're 7 and almost 4. We home ed, so things are quite busy, but really good. And yeah, I guess we live in a bit of a bubble really because we're surrounded by open-minded, like-minded people, not very many queer people. I'm queer, but yeah, I guess we're in a community where children's rights are really kind of at the forefront of what my home ed friends and their families are doing, and that's a really amazing place to be and to be involved in.
And you've been a real support to me personally over the past couple of months because, well, even less than that, because you've done some amazing signposting for me because my daughter's on the autistic spectrum. and you've kind of sent me to places that have just been like, oh my God, this place is exactly what I need.
Yeah.
And I'm so grateful to you for that. So yeah, it's
Oh,
time for
yeah,
the
I'm
payback,
happy
I
to
feel.
share it.
Awesome.
Yeah, I'm happy
So
to share it.
awesome. Thank you for that. So tell me a little bit. So explain to me, like, let's start from the beginning. EFT,
Okay.
matrix reprinting. What's that?
Okay. So EFT is essentially acupuncture without needles. So it's tapping on meridian points in the body. So for example, there's one on the top of the head and then on the face, different places. And it by tapping on those meridian points, as in acupuncture, you're stimulating the body's own sort of innate healing powers. So it sounds a little bit strange, but it has some really very promising evidence behind it. It has been trialed in lots of different ways, and it's becoming more popular, I would say. It was started by a guy called Gary Craig, who learnt some relatively similar technique and kind of made it his own. And since then, it's spread across the world, really. Matrix reimprinting is like an extension of that. So with EFT, you're able to bring down the intensity of an emotion or potentially a pain as well if you have a physical pain. Matrix reimprinting talks about going back to previous events. So, for example, if you've suffered with some kind of emotional trauma, you potentially will, at some point when that trauma occurred, have gone into fight, flight, or freeze. And when we freeze, and we don't complete the trauma cycle by discharging what has been left with us, that is where we become traumatized. And matrix reimprinting it's sort of like inner child work. It takes people back to that place, but with EFT alone, you have to actually go through, potentially relive the event in order to bring down the trauma. So every stage of the event, you'd be tapping to bring it down. Whereas Matrix, you don't actually need to relive any trauma at all. You can go back to right after the event happened, or whenever feels comfortable for the client, and then they're able to actually go in and ask their younger self what they would have needed at that time and what beliefs they formed about themselves or the world when that happened. So it's massively healing, and it can have a knock-on effect for everything that comes afterwards. So if you find that you've been left with this particular pain or left with a particular emotion or an issue, you can find that going back and doing that can have a real knock-on effect for where you are now and also how you move forward.
Hmm. And it's not, because I use EFT, I use it
Mm.
personally, and I teach people it as a very basic kind of a grounding technique. That's kind of like, that's how I use it in my practice. I'm not an EFT specialist,
Yeah.
but I use it in my practice as part of my coaching practice. And I
Mm-hmm.
had first heard, we talked about this before, didn't we? I first heard about EFT like, I don't know, 20 years ago. I remember seeing someone on morning TV talking about it, talking about tapping, and
Yeah.
me thinking, what? What's this voodoo kind of weird thing they're talking about? And then it kind of came back into my life later on when I was having really kind of debilitating panic attacks. And I was taught it by my coach at the time. And for me, it's become a tool for managing my anxiety. That's how I use EFT in my
Mm-hmm.
everyday life. And it's often how I teach clients, or what I teach clients to use it for, in that really kind of top
Mm-hmm.
level, managing that overwhelming emotion, kind of giving you a break in proceedings, grounding you back in your body, and making you, just putting you in a place where you're not feeling overwhelmed and panicky, and you're back in your own physical space.
Yeah.
But it's not like, what I was quite surprised at when I first did it, or when I first learned about it, when I'd heard about it, it all sounded quite woo woo. But you know what I mean by woo woo, don't you? But actually,
Yeah.
when you do it, I find it feels quite the opposite. It feels very not woo woo, whatever the opposite of woo woo is. What, like,
Unwoo woo. I'm not sure.
non woo woo ish. But it feels
Yeah.
very you feel very present, and it's not hypnosis.
Mm.
It's not kind of like,
No.
because I think a lot of people think that, especially when you're doing it with another person, when you're doing it with a coach, that there's some kind of like, oh, you'll be, like you're opening yourself up and all, and it's not that at all, is it?
No. It's very client centered. So the client is in control at all times. And as with coaching, we should never be taking people to places that they don't feel comfortable with. There's a lot of negotiation that needs to go on. But I guess, yeah, I have to say, it took me a while, even after I trained, it took me a while to actually believe in it. Because I thought it's just going to be something I integrate into my coaching and kind of offer, as you say, something I can show people, something I can do a bit of during sessions when things are feeling really intense. But
Like a
actually,
tool, yeah.
yeah, actually I have it's really mainly to do with my swap partner. So with EFT on our course, we were really encouraged to swap with someone on a regular basis. And my swap partner is amazing, and we see each other every week. And we've just been able to experiment in all kinds of ways using EFT and Matrix. And that probably was when I actually started to believe in it, because I saw the shifts in my swap partner and also in me. Until that point, I was like, oh yeah, I'm sure it helps, but I don't know how I feel about it. But seeing the actual changes and seeing how over, say, over a period of months, you can potentially start off being quite dissociated from what's going on in your body, not really noticing the sensations that you have around particular issues, to actually during the day noticing how your body feels. Like, that's always been a really big thing for me, not really being
Yeah.
connected to my body. And now I
Yeah.
can I feel anxiety, for example, I know where it's located in my body. I can feel like if it's moving, the size of it, the shape. Um, and that's in itself, I think, is really important and helpful, just to connect us a bit more to something that a lot of people are really disconnected from.
I think that's really common as well, don't you? And
Yeah.
it's not necessarily just for people who have trauma.
Mm.
So many people are disconnected from their physicalness, physical being.
Yeah,
Like it's kind of
absolutely.
like there's such a very clear disconnect between, and there even the language of things that we talk about. You know, we talk about, you know, brain being more important than brawn and all that jazz, and we kind of like have this thing
Mm.
around, it's not okay to be in your body, it's not okay to
Yeah.
be connected, because it feels, you know, it's all that Catholic guilt and all that jazz. It all feels very kind of like sinful and, you know, like
Yeah.
self-serving, and actually your experience is that that's totally not true at all.
Yeah, and I think for me it comes from not only being disconnected, I guess, from traumatic incidents, but also actually through years, like I'm talking about since I was 10 years old, years of dieting and hating my body and feeling the pressure from society, like there was something fundamentally wrong with it, that made me just unable to connect with it. Like, I didn't like the way it felt. It felt uncomfortable. It felt wrong, and so I just shut off from it. Um,
Yeah.
and I think only through the combination of using tools like EFT, and exploring how messed up diet culture is, and really bringing my activism, or bringing that into my activism, then I realized, like, it's okay to actually feel my body. It's part of being a human. It's your body. You only get one, and there is nothing fundamentally wrong with our bodies. Every single body is different, and there's just nothing wrong with them. And I think
Mm,
we're constantly told that there is so much wrong with our bodies. So even if
mm,
you start off being quite a confident person, or if you haven't experienced trauma on an ongoing basis, or on like a big trauma, a one-off episode, still people aren't really that connected to themselves.
definitely. And I think that thing about kind of, I spoke to my friend Lindsay, who I'm going to interview in a later episode, about, because she's a fat activist, and we were speaking about when she realised that her body meant that other people would make judgments, and she had a moment when the way she looked at herself changed, and she had never looked at herself that way before. And there was like, I mean, I'm putting words in her mouth, but there was like a flick in a moment when she kind of fell out of love with her own body, you know, like, in as
Mm.
much as how it was perceived by other people. And she realized that, and she talks a lot about that, about she kind of refused to do that. And she was bullied terribly. And all the while she was able to maintain this feeling of, that's your stuff.
Wow.
You know, it was very difficult. But I think a lot of us do that. We pick up something and we hear something and we attach to it. And before we know it, we feel like our body is against us. We feel like our body is our
Mm.
enemy. And we feel
Yeah.
like we hate everything about our body, and it's a prison. And, you know, it's and that's horrible, horrible, because you've got to
Yeah,
walk around in it all day, every day. And if you're in
exactly.
it all day, every day, and you hate it, that's not a nice place to be, is it?
No, not at
And
all.
so,
And sorry, go
go
ahead.
on. No, go on.
I was just going to say, so much of the language that we use around bodies, like we're constantly trying to make them less in size, take hair off of them, change their color. You know, there's all kinds of things that people all over the world are doing to change their bodies. And it's, I guess the language is like people are struggling to diet, they're fighting fat. You know, there's so much. It's like militarized in a way. We want to combat
Yeah.
our bodies, like kick your butt into shape, or you know, get your body ready for the summer because you can't show it as it is. It's disgusting. All the language around it is just so messed up, and you know, it's all just to sell us more stuff. It's not actually because that is the case. Um, yeah, and I mean, it's something I'm really passionate about, and I don't want to bore everyone. But
No, it's
yeah,
not
I think
boring at all. It's not boring at all. What changed for you around that then? Did you have a moment when you were like, ugh, I'm not doing this anymore? Was there an occasion
yeah,
when you felt that shift?
yeah, there was. I think actually, to be honest, there have been a lot of occasions since. So it's been definitely a process in kind of getting to where I am now, and I'm still by no means feeling super confident. But I mean, I've come like 100 million miles from where I was before. The first thing was yeah, it's just depressing to think about it. So I had coaching with a home ed mum who's amazing, who was trained to be a coach, and I was like, okay, I'll give it a go. It was really helpful, and then I think in like the fourth session, I thought, well, I have this thing, like I'm dieting, I'm constantly trying to lose weight. She won't be able to help me, but I'm going to mention it anyway. And we talked about it, and the fact that she kind of acknowledge that I wasn't the only person that was going through it, because even though I knew that well, a lot of people were dieting, I still felt so alone. I still felt like it was my battle, another militarized word, and I was never going to win it. And actually mentioning to her, I found it just kind of kicked me off into this like journey of finding there were other people that felt the same. So I started with reading Megan Crabb's Body Posy Panda, her body positive power book, and that was amazing. There were so many myths debunked in it that I was just like, oh my god. And then I just got more and more radical, I guess. The more I read fat activist books, the more I spoke to people and went to events. There were so many moments where I was just like, oh my God, and I feel like that about my body, and that's a lie. And I've been feeling like this for such a long time, and that's not true. Um, yeah, it's just mind blowing. And I think I still have those moments. Like I went to, I don't know if you know Secret Dinosaur Cult, it's an amazing
Yeah.
podcast with Sophie
Yeah.
Hagen and Jodie Mitchell.
The Sophie
So I went to,
Hagen podcast.
yeah,
Yeah.
so I went last night to one of the recordings, and just I went with a few friends who all identify as fat, and just being in a space where there are other fat people is just amazing. And I'm also, you know, super aware of the privilege I have as a small fat person. So for anyone that doesn't know the world of fat activism, there are like different levels of how people identify in terms of their fatness. So I would be what's considered like plus size. So I move
Okay.
through the world with an awful lot of privilege. I don't have
Mm.
to think about whether I could fit into a toilet or whether a chair might break, possibly. And yeah, just being in spaces where people are, I guess, just people are made to feel welcome, and what their needs are considered is really amazing. And yeah, it's just such a special thing. I try and do that really often. Go to fat
It's a
events.
it's a revelation, isn't it, to be, because
Yeah.
I'm kind of like, I'm like tall and I'm considered, I guess, plus size, but because I'm tall, you get that thing where you're not really that fat and all that. So I'm kind of like
Yeah.
mid-sized, I think, is the official word within fat circles. But I have friends who are what I like to call super fat. They're like, because they're so
Mm-hmm.
fat, but like there's a difference between that speak of body positivity speak, which is love the body you're in, because
Yeah.
that doesn't apply to people who are bigger than maybe a size 20, for example. It's kind of like, love the body you're in so long as you're still kind of like hourglass shaped, is what society says to us.
Yep.
Like, embrace your curves, but not if you're so big that, you have to think about whether you'll be able to get into airline seats, or, where people stare at you in public, or, whatever it might be.
Yeah.
And being in that space the first time, because I went to see Sophie Hagen live with my friend Louise, I was just like, what a relief. Like, it was lovely being in a space
Yeah.
where I wasn't the only person who wasn't a size 10. And not only that, but it was kind of like everybody wasn't a size 10. And not only that, but they were talking about it, which made a difference. Do you know what I mean? It wasn't like being at like a slimming club where no one was a size 10 and they were all like full of shame and talking about how horrible they felt about themselves. It was like being in a room where no one was a size, not that there's anything wrong with being a size 10, by the way. But it was, it was like the opposite of that was being in a room full of people going, and what of it? You know what I mean? It was lovely. It was really awesome.
Yeah. And you just cut out so much crap as well, because if you just walk up to a person and you can have a conversation with them about, I mean, generally in those spaces, there's a lot of shared interest in terms of like intersectional feminism and understanding of fat politics. Potentially people are quite radical, but I guess you can just go and you can like eat and you can drink and you don't feel like you're saying, oh, I'm just going to have like a slimline gin and tonic because, watching the weight. Like there's literally
I won't
none
have
of
an ice
that.
cream in the interval.
Yeah, I fucking will.
Yeah,
There's
we
none
all
of
are.
that like
Fuck
pretense.
you.
Yeah, we're all gonna have an ice cream. It's amazing. It's like a whole new level of, it's like a new starting point where everyone is on this kind of playing field of like, our bodies are fine just as they are. We may struggle with them. That's okay. It's no surprise. Society has made us feel this way, but we're all going to hang out together. And I think there are really, apart from queer spaces, there are very few places that I found where I feel so accepted and, I guess just okay with my body, seeing other people being okay with their body. Like I'm 30. No, I'm not 30. I'm 32. I wish I was 30 still. I just lost 2 years.
We'll talk about ageism related lying to
I don't know
yourself
where
another
that came
time.
from.
I'm 25.
32. And I was just going to say, like, I only wore a crop top for the first time a month ago. And just wearing a crop top, I was like, woohoo! I have never worn a bikini since I was maybe like 8. Just so many things that I've missed out on. And with my children, like I didn't used to want to go swimming with them. I didn't want to go on holidays because I was so self-conscious. And I don't have to do that anymore. I can just go and enjoy myself and not have to worry about what people are thinking of my body because I really don't care.
Yeah, which is massive, massive.
Yeah, it's huge. Yeah.
So does that crop up a lot in your coaching then? Because that's part of your offer as a coach, isn't it? You help
Yeah.
people with their body image.
Yeah. So, yes. And I've had people who have approached me to coach them in losing weight. And I found that really challenging because that's not something that I'm prepared to do. Like also for my own mental health, I cannot be around someone kind of helping them to lose weight. And I just don't believe in it. So I offer body liberation coaching, which I think includes, as with all coaching, it includes all aspects of people's lives, but the focus is that people are able to become comfortable with themselves. And it's not like an overnight thing, but there are so many resources and so many places that people can go to kind of get more aware of that and understand why they don't feel okay with themselves. And it's something I love all of my coaching, but it's one of the parts that I probably enjoy the most, seeing people go through that process of coming feeling awful about themselves and thinking, I've tried everything, I don't know what to do. And then maybe realizing that the things you've been trying are not the things that are going to help you. Like the things you've been trying are trying to change you and trying to make you fit into a different box, a different dress size. They're not going to solve your problems because, we've all, well, I say we've all, a lot of people have lost weight and realized they're just as unhappy as when they were a different size. It's not actually about the weight per se. There's so much more behind it. And people often think,
100%.
well, I'll lose the weight first and then I'll deal with my like emotional stuff. And it's just not, for me, I don't think that is the issue. It's not what works. People actually just forget about the weight, forget about what society expects you to look like or be. If you can learn to become comfortable with yourself, it doesn't matter if you are whichever size, because I guess you just have that like inner confidence to be able to go out and do things in your life that you wouldn't have done because you would have thought other people were judging you. Or it's just, I think it's
Yeah.
life changing, and I think for me it's been life changing. So being able to facilitate that and seeing that in other people is really a massive privilege.
Yeah. I think that's huge. That when
Yeah.
I obviously, when you're a coach, people often come to you with all of these things in my life I want to change, and often
Mm.
stuff around their physical being is on that list. And I'm a bit like you. I kind of am like, oh, I don't think we'll be doing that. Do you know what I mean? Like, I don't like.
Yeah.
No, I'm not a fitness and well-being coach, and I don't want to be. I'm about, same as you. I'm about, it's the whole person. And
Hmm.
when people say to me, oh, when I do this, and it's not necessarily just about weight or whatever, when I do this, I think I'll feel more confident. And my challenge to them
Yeah.
is always like, what about now? Like, what are we going to do about right
Hmm.
now? Because that's going to take some time, and that's valid. If you want to change things in your life, that's fine. I'm not saying have no goals, but what about today? What about tomorrow? What's stopping you from loving what you've got today, right now? And I think people
Yeah.
really overlook that. And I think the reason that people overlook that is because of the whole industry around becoming your best self,
Yeah.
and there's a
Exactly.
lot of money in that, a lot of money in that. Um,
Yeah.
so Meg is just saying she's sitting crying as she listens to it. Oh, Meg, we're
Oh.
sending you some love, my darling.
Yeah.
And Louise is saying she loves the Secret Dinosaur Club. Louise is my
Oh, yeah.
Copenhagen buddy. So you talked about intersectionality. So and that's kind of I know that's a shared passion for both of us. That this
Yeah.
idea that particularly intersectional feminism, that being a feminist and not being an intersectional feminist is kind of a bit of a write-off for me. Um, for people who don't understand, intersectionality means that you're considering people from all disadvantaged groups, for want of a better word. And so your feminism is not just about women, or specifically not just about women like you. It's about all people of all genders, including people of colour, including people who maybe have disabilities, including people who identify as LGBTQ. And I know that you do a lot of work around that in the queer space, don't you?
Yeah.
Can you talk about that? Can you talk about your experience as a queer coach and how that shows up and what that means
Sure.
for you?
Yeah. So, where to start? I guess it shows up in lots of different ways. I think when I, the more I explore queerness, and the more, um, the more I'm involved with queer community, I think I realise how I knew it before, but I realise how depressingly binary the world is. And so often, I mean, coaches, for example, so often coaches will just talk about, men and women, or relationships, but it only applies to straight relationships. Or
Mm-hmm.
there's just so much. It's just a given that everyone is straight, apparently. And I don't know if the world knows, but that's really not the case. So there are lots of people who aren't.
Newsflash.
Yeah. I know Donald Trump would like prefer for no one to know about it, but we actually exist. And I think for me, like, something that became really clear when I started coaching, and also when I started coaching in queer spaces, was that for people who exist, I guess, yeah, I guess in like marginalized communities, and I don't want to speak for communities that I'm not, that I don't represent. So like, I can just speak of my experience in the queer community, and also in the home ed community. People think that home ed people are very weird, and so there's a lot to
Bunch of
there's
yogurt
a lot of
knitters, you
work.
lot, aren't you?
Yeah, there's a lot around that as well. But I guess it's understanding that a lot of people who identify as queer want a queer coach. There's a lot of experiences that people who have lived cis het lives do not understand.
And
And I
just
guess
to
it's
just to
from,
frame that for people, sorry, for people who don't
yeah.
understand the lingo. So cis means cisgendered. That would be living in the gender that you were assigned at birth.
Hmm.
And het means heterosexual, so straight, basically. Go on, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, no, no. Yeah, so people that live cis het lives do not have an understanding. And when, like, I've been in the position where I've been to a therapist, for example, and having to explain to them, like, from the beginning, why we chose to home educate, or why what being queer means, it's just exhausting. You have so much more work and emotional labor to do for the other person before you can even start, and then they just
Yeah.
don't really understand the world that you live in. And I'm obsessed with queering things. I said to you when we talked before, so I'm constantly queering life, and just seeing, I guess, just seeing the other options that people don't feel are available to them. People just think, this is how life should be. They should live in a certain way because that's what everyone does. And that's really not how it has to be.
And you
Yeah.
know what? I don't think, because I've got a friend who's a queer birth worker, and they've kind of introduced me to all kinds of stuff. And like, I don't know if you saw, did you watch the Seahorse program that was on a couple of weeks ago? That was it's amazing. It was BBC documentary about a
Okay.
trans man who had a baby, and it's called
Oh, okay.
Seahorse. It's an incredible program. I recommend you watch it. It's
I'm
on
going to write it
iPlayer.
down. Sounds great.
It's brilliant. And they kind of pointed me at it. And in that program, I was watching it with my 14-year-old daughter, who, is the most woke 14-year-old on earth. God love her. She's had it hammered into her from the beginning. I sometimes think, oh my God, I've done such a good job on her. She's going to be a right pain in the ass. But anyway, um, we were watching it together, and the the guy in the program was going through his birthing pack, like his preparation for birth pack, and it was all like the mother, like she, and he was like going through changing it like to the parents,
Amazing.
they, all the way through, until he was
Yeah.
like, what, why does he even have to do that? That's silly. Why doesn't it just say the parent and they? And I was
Yeah.
like, because that's the way the world is set up currently. And if you're not
Yeah.
looking for it, you wouldn't even clock it. Like, I went to an event today, and ladies and gentlemen, do you know what I mean? It's like, it's so
It's everywhere.
normalized, yeah, to just
Yeah.
speak in that. So I guess, and I'm not queer, and I don't want to speak for that, but when I spoke to you last time before we came online, and you said that, I thought, God, yeah, if you go and work with a coach and you spend the whole of your first session basically talking around your gender and your sexual preference or your
Mm.
sexuality, Christ, and you're paying them to listen to, like,
Yeah.
for you to lay out the groundwork for them. It must be nice,
Exactly.
and to be able to cut through all of that.
Yeah, and I think fatness as well. If you're having to go to someone who still believes that dieting is like a completely valid thing to be doing, and that they would encourage that in their clients, it's also really problematic. Then to sit there and be like, I've had doctors before who said to me, well, if you just lost weight, like, I'm sure everything would be fine. And that doesn't help at
Yeah.
all. So even to have to, yeah, I guess what I'm thinking is that no one should have to do groundwork for their therapist, their coach. It should be There should be like commonalities. We're starting from the same starting point. I understand what intersectional feminism is, for example, or I understand that the world isn't just male and female. So people aren't just wasting their energy, because it's exhausting. If you're really struggling with
Mm.
anxiety or any other kind of issue, and you turn up to someone and you have to sit there, pay them to do like an hour of emotional labor to explain to them why your life is valid, what choices you've made and why that's okay, and then you leave, like, what have you actually got from it other than educating? The therapist should pay you.
Yeah, you should do that. You should send them an invoice. Every
Yeah,
time a
yeah.
queer person goes to a therapist, the first session, the therapist should pay them. Yeah, that would be awesome. We should set that
Yeah,
up.
well, yeah, and the same with people of color, like the amount
Yeah,
of work that people of color have to do in order to just start from like a playing field where people
get
understand the
heard.
oppressions that they're
Yeah,
facing. Yeah,
yeah,
it must just be absolutely exhausting.
yeah. It's interesting, the thing, I know I keep going back to it. I think it's because it's what I can relate to. The thing
Mm.
about the fatness and the weight. I went to the doctor this week just for a asthma clinic checkup. And when I got there, it was with the nurse, and she said, "Okay, so before we start, I'll need to measure you and weigh you." And I was like, "Okay." So like, she measured me, and I got on the scales for the first time in I don't know how long. I don't even know the last time I was on a set of scales in another medical situation, I imagine.
Yeah,
Um, and I had like Dr. Martin boots on, and she said, I didn't even look. Like, I didn't even want to know what the number was. I'm not interested. It makes no difference to me at all. It has no
yeah,
value for me whatsoever. and and she said, "Oh, don't worry, I'll take a bit off for your boots."
Oh,
And I said, "I don't care." But just
yeah, yeah,
that another woman would think that in order to make a woman feel comfortable, it's necessary to acknowledge that she might not be comfortable with her weight, and that we all know the
yeah,
tricks of, go for a shit before you go and get weighed, take your shoes off, wear your summer's dress. Do you know what I mean? It's like, and I
yeah,
know that because I spent a lot of time in my 30s in and out of weight loss clubs. So, I could kind of write a book on how to cheat that. But yeah, I just thought it was so interesting that that was just so normal. It's
yep.
so
It is
normal.
normal. Yeah, and it's messed up. I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, one of my things when I had my daughter, so my daughter is nearly 8, so she's, yeah, 7 3/4, as she likes to tell me. She when she was born, and I obviously found out as she was born that I had a daughter I didn't know before, I remember feeling absolutely terrified that this is what I'm passing on to her. Like, I haven't got my shit together, I'm overweight, um, I can't do things because I don't have the confidence to do those things. What am I passing on to her? Like, I'm going to mess her up, basically.
Gonna fuck
And
her
what I
up. Yeah.
exactly, and I thought my solution was lose weight like you've never lost weight before. And I just put all my energy into dieting. Obviously, parenting too is pretty exhausting, but I thought that the answer was that she would grow up seeing a woman who was slim and who was a good example. And
Mhm.
that was what I was obsessed with for such a long time. And only when I
Mhm.
realized that, I guess, from, like I said to you before, about having coaching and going on that kind of journey, dislike the word journey, but I'm going to have to use it, um,
Same. I don't
to
know
find out
what other
about,
word you can use though. It's
yeah, that
so
void,
inadequate, but the only one that
a
works. I don't know.
pilgrimage, something. Yeah. Only when I
Adventure.
went on that, yeah, it was an adventure. Only when I went on that and actually realized that what my daughter needs is not to see a thin body and to see, disordered eating habits and to see someone who dislikes her body. What my daughter needs is to see a mum who exists in her body, does not weigh herself obsessively. Like, we don't have scales in the house anymore. I used to
We
weigh
don't.
myself every single day relentlessly.
Mhm.
Um, and just, yeah, I realized what she actually needs is someone who can show her how it is to navigate the world in my body, accepting my body, and showing her how to accept hers. And
Mhm.
I think something that's really important to mention is I don't want this to sound like I'm shaming anyone who's still dieting,
No.
because we've all been there, and that is something that people still do, and there's no shame in it. The shame comes from the companies who encourage you to do that. And yeah, I think people might be sitting here watching this thinking that we're kind of anti people who diet, and it's definitely not the case.
No.
It's anti diet culture. um,
Yes.
and yeah,
Yes.
it's definitely nothing to be ashamed of.
It's like with the rhetoric around feminism, and like
Mm,
it can read and does read and is often joked about. Oh, you hate all men. It's like, no, I'm absolutely 100% a card carrying feminist, and I fucking love men. I hate the system. I hate the
yeah,
patriarchy.
patriarchy,
I hate
exactly.
that, and I hate what that does to people of all genders. Fucking love
Yeah.
men, me.
Me not so
you
much,
know,
but
well, I probably have your share of that, to be fair.
okay. I've
we
passed that on
won't
to
go
you.
there. So talk to me about the zine. Is it zine or zine? It's
It's
zine.
zine.
Zine. Okay.
Yeah.
So talk to me about that and how
So
that came about and what that's about. Because I'm really
sure. So
interested.
it's called Queers and Co. And it came about because when I was setting up my coaching practice, I wanted to talk to people who were really body confident. So I wanted to kind of go on a bit of a mission, speak to everyone I could to find out what their tips might be. I thought there might be some like hidden secrets that I didn't know about. Turns out there aren't. um, so what I found was that in the body positive and fat activist world, I was finding a lot of representation of, as we talked about before, kind of plus size, white, cis, het women, so cisgender and heterosexual. And I just found it really boring, to be honest. I felt I didn't feel represented as a queer person, and I'm cisgender, so I identify as she, her. but I have a lot of friends who don't, and I just didn't feel like there were that many spaces where queer bodies were represented. So I contacted the people that I liked and found most interesting, really, through different channels like Instagram and Facebook, and just asked them if I could interview them and see what, you know, were they body confident? How did they feel about their bodies? What were the intersections that had played a part in how they felt about their bodies? So speaking to people of colour, for example, how does that work when you're also queer and also a person of colour who exists in a marginalised body? You know, that there are definitely intersections there that I'm not experienced in, and I think those people really need more of a platform. So I started off talking to people, thinking I'd use it for my own research, and after probably the first interview, I was like, this is amazing. I can't keep it. I can't just, record the sessions and be like, oh yes, thank you very much, that's lovely. I need
Very
to actually do
interesting, thank
something with
you.
it. Yeah. I'm now going to like hold it all. So I decided to just put it into a zine and share it. And again, I thought, I'm just tipping down, I thought that I would only do one. And the more people I spoke to, I was like, this is amazing. I can't just stop at one. I have to keep going. And it just went from there, really. And the first zine came out at the beginning of August and has got really great feedback. And the next one's due out at the beginning of November. And I just absolutely love it. Like, I never thought that I would be putting together a zine, but it's so fun. And the people that I've talked to, I mean, every time I talk to someone, the interviews last for an hour. Every time I talk to someone, I come away just speechless in a way, just hearing other people's journeys to accepting their body.
Adventures.
Yes. Other people's quests to accepting their bodies, and how being queer like plays a part in that, because it isn't just, diet culture, for example. Yeah, it's messed up, but it's like a whole new level when you're, say, for example, I had an amazing guest who, I hope you won't mind me saying this, who's
No,
a
go ahead.
trans man, and he, during his transition, he noticed that when he was in a female presenting body, he would be in the gym and people would be like, oh yeah, you're here to lose weight, and they'd be asking like how they got on and stuff. And then as soon as they transitioned and were living and presenting as a man, people were like asking him how strong he was and how he was at the gym to build muscle and to get
To be buff
stronger.
and get a six pack.
Yeah, and just to see all of those things that like people in the straight world don't experience, that kind of change in how their bodies are viewed, or understanding from some people that I spoke to who were in lesbian relationships how much different the expectations of bodies are. People are generally much more open-minded to bodies being of different sizes and shapes, whereas in straight culture, there's kind of some expectations. Diet culture does tend to be very straight and like heteronormative. So there's a man, there's a woman, the woman's thin, the man's muscly, they fall in love. And yeah, I guess with Queers and Co, just hearing that isn't the case for so many people and that it is not represented at all. Well, when I say at all, it's much less represented. There are amazing activists out there who are doing that already.
So
And
what?
I guess, yeah,
Sorry.
this is just my contribution.
So what's your so knowing a bit about that and being kind of in that, like, and having those
Mm.
conversations, what's your assessment then for how different it is for someone who is queer negotiating that world? Like,
Yeah.
do you mind talking about that?
No, I think, to be honest, there isn't really a straightforward answer. I think because of the intersectional nature of it, there's so much
Mm,
that comes into play. Um,
mm,
I mean, I had one person who, amazing person who you'll see in the first scene if anyone reads it, who talked about being, so their dad had lots of money saved up for them for a car for their 18th or 17th birthday, and they turned it down and requested to go to fat camp to lose weight. And actually, at this camp, they had lots of lesbian experiences because there were loads of girls just locked up in a camp for, a month. Um, so I guess, yeah, I don't know. I know that doesn't answer your question, but I think it varies because people identify in so many different ways. There's not really one true answer of,
And I
this is
guess
how it
that's
feels to
me
be
with
queer.
my cis glasses on, going, oh, all queer people must be the same.
I guess, and also
Check myself on
the
that one.
funny thing is, well, the funny thing is that queerness is like, there is literally no way to be queer. That's why I love queerness so much, because it's just anything and everything. Um, yeah, so it's like asking, I guess, how long is a piece of string? Like it could be as long as you wanted it to. There are so many different identities.
Yeah. And I know for you, the word queer is really important, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah,
And
I love
we've
it.
we've had a little bit of drama around that just of late.
Yeah.
Do you want to
Yes,
fill us in on that one?
sure. So, about, I don't know, like 3 weeks ago, maybe a month ago, I applied to trademark the name Queers and Co, because it's the name of the community. We have at the moment the zine, but in November we're launching the first live event, and then there's also a podcast coming next year. So I wanted to trademark it like any person would want to trademark their name, because I think it's awesome. It's a good
Yeah,
name.
it is. It's a great
So I
name.
applied, and last Friday I got a letter from the Intellectual Property Office saying that they will not trademark Queers and Co because it contains an offensive word that is contrary to British values. That's the name, Queers. So
Wow.
yeah, yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah. So where's that put you then?
Um, well, no one else can trademark it at the moment because it's not allowed. But I have started a petition with the help of an amazing person called Ange, who we both know, obviously, who you
We
put me in
do,
touch
from
with. And
Ange Panda from Inspiring Women Changemakers. She's awesome. I'm interviewing her
yeah,
in a few weeks actually as part of this
yeah,
series.
she said that's so cool. They're going to love it.
Yeah, she's
um,
amazing.
yeah, so she has given me great support on kind of, I had a petition, but actually restructuring it and making sure that it's not just queer people that aren't able to choose how they identify with the IPO. There are also other groups of marginalised communities or minority communities who aren't able to potentially choose their identity because they might be using a word that I guess a government body has deemed offensive, even though that word is not used by them.
And it's
So
claimed by
I've
the
set up
community that they're, yeah, yeah.
exactly. So, like in the 80s, there's plenty of evidence that queer had already been reclaimed, and it may have been used, it may still be used as an insult by straight people sometimes. But for me, it's my identity. Like it's how I identify with it so strongly. Like lesbian doesn't fit, bi doesn't fit, because it's so much more than that. Like it's not just about sexuality, it's about the way I live my life. Like I choose not to opt into certain things, and I even know of some fat people who don't necessarily identify as some fat people who identify as straight who still identify as queer because they're still existing within a marginalised community. So it feels really important to actually have the IPO overturn the decision and to allow Queers and Co to be a trademark. And I spoke to someone from Rebel Dykes, Siobhan, who is amazing and gave me advice because she applied to register a community interest company with Companies House with the word Dykes in, and it was refused. She set up a petition, and within a week, Companies House had changed their minds. And the crazy thing is that there's precedent for queer being used in government departments. So there's already over 40, I think 47 companies on Companies House that have the word queer in them. And the government has recently said, I think it was last week, that they're going to allow people to identify as queer in the census. So how some government departments can be
And
okay with it.
and on a lot of documentation, you'll see LGBTQ, and the Q
Exactly.
stands for
The
queer.
Q.
Yeah, exactly. It's not like it's not
Yeah,
like it's not used in general political parlance as it stands anyway.
exactly. Exactly. And I have heard some
Madness.
people, yeah, I mean, some people still consider it offensive, but yeah, I just don't. For me, it's a word with real power, and
Mm.
I feel like we should have the right to be able to use it however we want to. It's not offensive. It's all about context.
It is, and I think the context is really important. It's like I would,
Mm.
it's like the word slut. Like I know that there's been a big movement to reclaim that word. And, you know, if a boyfriend once called me it, and in not an affectionate way, and it was probably the most horrific and offensive thing I'd ever had said to me to that time. However, I would absolutely use that word to self-identify in particular situations. So context is everything, isn't it? Do you know what I mean? It's like, yeah, and it's really interesting. I think that is going to open a whole load of more conversations, and I don't imagine that is the end of that conversation. I mean, it's also that thing, isn't it, that you can imagine that there's someone in an office somewhere who went, clutch their pearls, like,
awkward,
and like they, you know, like, you know, there's some
how
Karen
offensive.
somewhere. There's some Karen somewhere who's like really angry about it. And you're like, move along, Karen, move along. Oh, it's
well,
awesome.
I guess if you don't know, you might well, there are loads of people that still consider that word offensive. I mean, straight people, I know there are some people in the LGBT community who've had it used against them, and they tend to be LGBT elders who still find it offensive because obviously they've lived through the trauma of being called that word in a derogatory way. But I think there's so much power in reclaiming it, and it's interesting having to explain it to straight friends when you say like, oh, I'm queer, and they're like, oh, they find it really uncomfortable. And then they're like, but what does that mean? Isn't that offensive? Why are you saying that about yourself? And then you have to explain that, like, it's not an offensive word, blah, blah, blah. So there's clearly still a lot of educating and, you know, discussing to be done about it, as you say.
And going full circle on that, that's the same with the word fat. People really don't know what to do with it when you say, oh, blah, 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 I'm fat.
Oh my God, it's the best. So I love using it because, yes, no, you're not. Or like, here, let me give you this size 8 dress to try on. You definitely will fit in it. I promise you will. And you're like, no, I am too fat for that dress. No, you're not really. Put it on. And you're like, oh, look, it goes over my arm.
Yeah. Don't call yourself that. You're not fat.
Yeah.
You're beautiful.
People can't bear it. Oh, and the worst for me is you're not fat, you're curvy. I just feel like that's really triggering for me. I'm like, don't tell me I'm curvy.
Do you know, I find that the words curvy and larger, I find those words more offensive.
Yeah, they're horrible. It's like,
because they mean I think you're fat, but I don't want to use that word.
Yeah, you know, because then it implies that fatness is bad. So they're saying like, you're not fat. I can't bring myself to say that word. You're something that's still horrible, but will make it sound nicer. Like it's still wrapped up in fat phobia. People aren't just like, you know, if people say they're thin, totally fine. No one really cares. As soon as you say you're fat, it's like, oh my God, alarm bells. Yeah. Becomes really awkward.
Yeah, it's really interesting actually with a teenage daughter, how I am kind of conscious of that. We had a conversation like last week about calling someone fat, and she'd said something. I can't remember what she said, but she said something about somebody, and she was describing somebody in a room, and she said, that lady over there, blah blah blah. And I said, which lady? She said, oh, the larger lady. I said, the fat lady. Oh, Mum, don't say that. And I was like, oh my God. Do you know, obviously we had a conversation about it.
Yeah.
But you know, it's like, and I don't think that she's been, I'm not entirely responsible for everything that's been said to her, but I know that probably she's picked up on stuff that I've said over the years that has not been the healthiest about body image. But you know, I kind of thought that she was kind of a bit immune to that, because like you said about living in that bubble, and I was a bit like, oh shit, oh my God, do you know what I mean? Even though I'm doing all this work to try and protect her from that,
it's everywhere. It's like swimming against the tide, right? There's you like telling her that it's okay, and there's the whole rest of the world like, it's not okay to be fat, lose weight now, blah blah blah. It's not. Sometimes it feels like it's impossible to win, and I guess we just have to do our best as parents to constantly be like, oh, this is my body, I'm okay with my body. And it's quite exhausting sometimes, because I sometimes feel like I don't want to be okay with my body one particular day, but I can't obviously show that to my children, because that for them is like a lesson in bodies are not okay, you have to change them.
Yeah, definitely. God, yes. So we're coming to the end of our time together. But is there anything that you want to make sure that I know that you've got lots, and I feel like we could talk for hours and hours, but I know, like, is there anything that you want to, like, if you could make, if you wanted people to know something or take something away from this, what is
Yeah.
that?
It's a really good question. I feel like we've talked about most of the things that I feel like I'd really like people to know. Um,
Okay. Because I have got a couple of
I
questions and
guess,
comments as well, so go on.
yeah. No, I guess I'll see if something comes to me if that's okay. Let me know
Yeah, of
what it is that
course.
you were going to say.
So Meg says, may I ask, she's got two comments. May I ask, do you believe in striving for a healthy weight or not at all? She said she joined the video a little late. And she says, my husband is over 30 stone and quite happy. He's a pro wrestler, so very active. A guy once said to me, oh, you're married to me, gesturing a belly. Bald guy. I was pissing
Oh God.
myself and just said, oh, you mean the fat bloke? His face was a picture. So just going back to her question, she says, do you believe in striving for a healthy weight or not at all?
Yeah, so I
That's a
would
really
say,
interesting question.
yeah, and it's a question that a lot of fat activists actually won't discuss anymore. So I would
You
say
don't
that
have
there
to
is
answer it if
no,
you don't want to.
no, I don't mean that. I just mean like it's such a question that comes up so much. So I'm definitely happy to answer it. There actually isn't such a thing as a healthy weight. So there is something called BMI, which is absolute bullshit, that was invented by a statistician to measure general populations and has since been, I think it was in the 80s, was then suddenly used for measuring weight and deciding what weights were healthy. It has absolutely no bearing on whether we're healthy or not. Um, the reason a lot of fat activists won't answer the health question is because it's not a question of health. People have a right to exist in the world and be treated as humans, no matter what their weight, no matter what their health status. You know, what does that? And I'm not saying that this is what the question was implying, but if we consider that healthy people are better in some way, one, it's incredibly ableist, and two, what does that mean for people who exist in bodies who wouldn't be considered healthy? Does that mean that they're not entitled to the same healthcare, or they're not as much of an important human as other people? And I think it's yeah. I mean, really, there is no healthy weight. People don't owe anyone else their health. People exist or deserve to exist in their bodies and show up in the world exactly as they are and be treated with respect.
Yes.
People should not be forced to kind of lose weight or to look a certain way in order to be entitled to healthcare or to get insurance, because people, I mean, through the ages, it's been shown through so much research that fat people have always existed. Fast food hasn't always existed. Diet culture has existed for a really long time, but even before then, fat people existed. These are shapes of bodies. People come in all different shapes of sizes, just like we would say different heights, different eye colours, different hair colours. Fatness or thinness or whatever it is another characteristic, and it's not something
Hmm.
that people can actually change about themselves. We have a set weight point, and we have like a 20 pound kind of um what's the word, like a window that we generally, if we don't diet and we just exist in our bodies and eat when we're hungry, stop when we're full, move our bodies if we want to, we will be within that weight range generally. You can diet and you can lose like 3 or 4 stone, but you will eventually go back to where your body wants to be naturally. You have no say unless you live a very, very disordered life for the rest of your life. Potentially, you will always go back to that set point. And I think what people don't realize as well is every time you diet, you increase that set point. So
Yes. Which is that
the
whole thing
more
about I
people
lost
have
a stone, I
dieted,
put back on 2 stone. Yeah.
exactly, because your
Hmm.
body goes into starvation mode and it's like, oh my god, there's only so long I can exist like this for. And as soon as you start to eat again, you can't stop, and the body just holds on to everything, and you go back to a weight that your body feels, okay, we've got enough now, like in case she does that to us again, we're going to be okay. um
Yeah.
so yeah, I would say there's like a lot of layers there, and I would ask anyone asking what healthy weight is to really look into why we consider something a healthy weight. It's because we've been told that that is healthy and that's unhealthy. And yeah, it's not as simple as that at all.
The health thing is a really interesting one, and I've been really surprised since being inside kind of fat positivity communities about that, because I came with a certain amount of misunderstanding around that, and and I was carrying that for myself. I was kind of thinking, well, yes, it doesn't matter what I look like, but it's important that I'm healthy, and then hearing people say, actually, you don't owe anyone you don't owe anyone health, and how are we measuring
Yeah.
health anyway, was a real like moment for
Yeah.
me, and I do think it's used. I mean, I know you'll agree, I think, but it is used as a bit of it's a fat phobic stick to beat you with. It's like,
Yeah.
oh
Well, you're
well,
not
okay, well, it's
healthy.
fine for you to say you love your body you're in, and it's fine for
Yeah.
you to say that you embrace and you want to be and just show up in the world, but
Yeah.
you're not healthy, and that really matters, and it's like,
Yeah.
my health is none of your business,
Yeah.
and
And I have two
you
things
can't
that
make a decision based on how it looks. Go on, sorry, go ahead.
exactly. No, I was just going to say two things come to mind around that. So the first one is, how about mental health? How about
Mm,
caring for yourself as a person and actually living a life that is worth living? No one gets to the end of their life and thinks, I wish I'd lost an extra stone. Most people get to the end of their lives and think, I wish I played with my children on the beach because I had the confidence to go and do it. I wish I'd done, like, there were so many things that I lived for the future. When I'm thin, I will do X, Y, and Z. And it was miserable. Now I actually do
mm.
the things and I actually have a life. And the other thing was around, um, oh, what was it? I think I've lost it now.
You said two things. The
Yeah,
first thing
I
was,
think it
what
might have
about mental
gone.
health?
Yeah, and the
That
other
happens
thing
to me all
was,
the time.
the other thing was, hmm, no, I think it's gone. If it comes back, I'll say it. But yeah, sorry.
So let's do a little bit of signposting then, because I'm sure that people are kind of have listened to you speak and thought, my God, I need more of this woman in my life. And or I want to know where these places are that they're hanging out, where these incredible fat people
Yeah.
are, or whatever.
Oh yeah.
Uh, so so let's talk first about where people can find you. So where can people find you on
Okay.
social? Where can they find the zine? How can they engage with you personally?
Yeah, so I'd say probably the best place is my website, which is gemkennedy.com. And the zine is on there. Also, directions to joining the Facebook group for Queers and Co. And just to say that it's called Queers and Co, but it's actually for queers and allies. That's the co. So as long as you're an understanding, respectful person towards queer folks, then you're very welcome to join. I'm on Instagram and Facebook as the Gem Kennedy. And I do have on my website a list of some resources, including people like Sophie Hagen, Jess Baker, different books and comedy shows and places that people might want to start if they're looking to get into
Amazing.
understanding fat positivity more.
Amazing. And your coaching and that, can
Yeah.
people kind of find out more about that on your website as well?
Yeah, that's all on there. So there's a separate page for EFT if people are particularly interested in finding out about EFT on its own, or I use it as part of my coaching as well. So I offer coaching for activists and as well as body liberation coaching and self-empowerment coaching, which is for anyone who wants to feel more confident and actually start to take up space in the world, which isn't always that easy. Yeah, so people can go there, they can click through, they'll see at the end, once they've had a look and they decide if it's something you want to find out more about, then there's a complimentary breakthrough call that people can book onto and have a chat with me for an hour
Amazing.
and see what they can work out.
Amazing. Perfect. And do you have a buy me a coffee link?
I don't know.
You need one. We'll talk about it when we finish the
Okay,
video. Um,
okay.
so let me just do a little bit of signposting from my end, because I will rip this from Facebook and I will post it on YouTube. So if you are watching this on Facebook, then you're watching on my page, Heidi Mavir, the Unstoppable Woman. I do these every Sunday night at 7 o'clock, and it's a different person each week. I'll talk about next week in just a second. You can follow me on Instagram at Heidi Bang Tidy, and we also have a Facebook group attached to this page. It's called Heidi Mavir, the Unstoppable Woman Inspiration Station. And what we're doing in there at the moment and over on my Instagram stories is we're doing 100 days of self-care. We're on day 6. So if you want to jump in and join us on that, you don't have to have started from the beginning. We would love to have you. That's for people of all genders who want to get to grips with what self-care looks and feels like for them between now and Christmas. 100 days takes us up to Boxing Day from when we started. So it's
Amazing.
like 3 months of being fucking incredible to yourself. Um, which is a pretty vital thing to do. I think it's an awesome thing to do. So we're really having fun with that. But what else can I say? My website is heidimavir.com. And you can find out about my coaching on there. And if you are on my Facebook page, do make sure that you sign up for the emails that I send out every week with a recording of this weekly video and also signposting to different things that's happening. My Unstoppable Woman Bootcamp is relaunching again, or is starting again in October time. So you'll get some information about that too. And next week is my birthday. The
Oh, mine
29th.
too.
Birthday twins!
Yeah,
There
not
you
on the
go.
29th. I'm the
Okay.
second. Few
Okay,
days.
so you see, all the best people are Libras. That's the way that works.
Yeah.
So next Sunday, rather than having a guest, I kind of spoke to a couple of people and I spoke to my coach, and I've been persuaded to do an Ask Me Anything session next Sunday for my birthday. So I'll put something up so that you can ask me questions that you can, and I will pretty much take any questions within. No, I will. I'll take any questions. I might not answer them all. We'll see how it goes. So if you want to ask me questions about Unstoppable Woman, if you want to ask me questions about being a single mom, if you want to ask me questions about being an autism parent, if you want to ask me questions about being a burlesque performer, any of those things and everything in between, I'm happy to take questions on. So I will pop a thread up on the Facebook page and in the group. And yeah, I think that's it. Thank you so much for joining us. Oh, and I will teach Gemma how to set up a Buy Me a Coffee link, and I will post a Buy Me a Coffee in the top of this video. So if you have enjoyed tonight and you want to give us a little something back as a gesture for our time and energy this evening, then you can buy us a coffee, and we will go and spend it on coffee or something else. But yeah, thanks so much for tonight, Gem. I
Yeah,
really,
thanks for
really
having me.
appreciate it. It's been awesome, and I think it's just been ace. I was really pleased when you said that you'd do it, so I really appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I've loved it.
All right, my lovely. All right, guys, we'll see
Great.
you all soon, and take care.
Bye.
Have a lovely rest of weekend. See you later. Bye.
Bye.